that day, but Matthew Rose and a number of other leaders have stepped up to say they'll help lead it. So anyway,
very good.
Enough of announcements.
Sounds pretty cool. Siebert's bringing me in May if you can't get enough of me, but after today you might have had enough of me and won't make them. I'm delighted to be back with you. Thanks for the introductions, and please bear with me as I still try to put names with faces with congregations. I think part of the joy of this is you get to know a couple of us, but the downfall to that is I'm not here every time to really get to know you as well. So, but at the same time, never hesitate to reach out and say you need any of us. And we'll get back to you. So, anybody got anything coming up? Is there anybody in the room not doing a fall stewardship drive, but they're doing a winter or spring effort instead? So you've all got something to do these days. Okay. Has anybody launched yet? Anybody launching? You sent out letter number 1.
Yes.
Okay.
Yesterday. Yep.
Okay, so you're underway. I mean, no going back now, right?
Right.
Good. All right. So this session is fully designed to make sure you feel really good about everything, but we're going to spend very little time talking about your brochure, your bulletin announcements, and your intent card. Okay? Because that was the primary focus of our last time together. There's a video about it if you need more on it, or you just call us and say, I'm struggling with the brochure. Let's get going. And by the way, if you are struggling with the brochure, my rule is struggle for about an hour and send it to us, and let us help you. Okay? I don't want somebody, spending 14 days on a brochure and not knowing what to do. I'd rather you send it to me, let me give you feedback, and then let's just move it along. Okay? Because it's important, but it's not the most important thing. I mean, yes, everybody will see it. It'll even be in your Basecamp folder, and other people in the group might judge you on it. But that was supposed to be funny, so sorry. I'll drink more coffee and work on
Probably a little bit more truth than
work on my comedy. But no, we need to get on with things. So brochures, and just so you know, with where you are, if you're doing a fall drive, your brochure should either be done or pretty close to it. If it's not, let's get it moving. Spend an hour on it, send it to us. Let us get going. Your inserts come right off of the brochure. We usually do 3. The backside is a graph. The graph comes off of an Excel spreadsheet. You do the current column, you post it, and you tell us for us to do the hoped for column. If you want to save me 5 minutes, remind me what your goal is, even when you post it, and then I don't have to go look up what your goal was to figure out what to do. But I know how to do that, so you don't have to tell me. But we'll do the hoped for column. And just so you know, are there any engineers in the room? Excellent. It's not an engineering document, to be precise. It is an illustrative document to help show graphically the type of movement we may need. If I'm going to err on the side of asking people for more money than less, because I'm a fundraiser. Okay, but it's not an engineering document. It just has to give a graphic representation of the type movement we need in order to achieve the goal. Okay, yes.
We learned a very valuable lesson by the 3 inserts.
Okay.
We saw the same picture on each insert and thought, oh, they're going to, of course, insert another picture on the other inserts. No, they weren't. So we got them. They all look alike. So now we went back.
Okay.
This is just costing more money. But we went back and said, no, we want these pictures.
Okay.
And so now
Okay.
we're going to be doing, just so what you see on the mock-up from the designer is
That's what they're
actually
thinking.
for real.
Right, okay.
So,
Who was your designer? You know,
Yeah.
Stephanie, Nicole, or Elliot? Stephanie? Okay.
I mean, and she
Right.
was very cooperative
Sure.
after, but our 3 bulletins looked exactly alike because we had the same opening line, and then they took the picture.
Okay.
So
Yep.
it's just,
So-
it was a
What the designer sends you is what it's going to look like. So that's a good thing to know. Which brings me to the intent card. Unless you have anything special for your intent card, You don't have to do anything about that. Those are pretty standard look, standard, language change. But I will tell you the number one thing that you better proofread, if you don't proofread anything else, proofread your intent card. It is the thing our designers, and this is on video for them to see now, it is the thing our designers mess up on the most. Because they're pretty standard, sometimes they'll forget to change an address or change the church name. So please, 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 let's make sure we do proofread the intent cards before we print them. And make sure that we have the correct address and name of the church. Also, just make sure that just look at it. Make sure the graph is right. Make sure it's your stuff. It doesn't take that long, please.
Some churches might want to add a line to it too.
Absolutely, and you are free to add a line. You're free to add a checkbox.
About your endowment?
Yes, and typically for endowment, I would have that box at the very bottom, little box that says I have or am interested in including Holy Cross in my estate plan. That's a fine thing to have. I tend not to go the route of putting, do you want to sign up for automatic giving kind of things on the intent card? You're welcome to if you want to. I prefer to focus on that and follow up. I think if you give people too many decisions, you might shut them down. And so I just want to get the gift. Once I get the gift, then I'll work on how can we work a different way to make it, to do it. But if you really want to push automatic giving, or if you have a challenge gift to get more people to sign up on automatic giving, you very well may want to have that there. Or if you have a lot of people on automatic giving and you want the intent form to be your authorization to change their bank account information, just make sure that you put a blurb on there that says, by signing this form, you're giving us permission to adjust your bank account and take all your money, or however you want to word that, and move with that. All right, I'm going to close the jokes today because I'm not going
It's too early.
And I've been up since 3. I'm ready to go.
I have just a quick question,
Yeah.
just in terms of digital hospitality. I forgot to ask you what the Wi-Fi password is. Is that something that we're able to use?
Yeah, God's grace.
God's
all
grace?
one word, all lowercase.
Okay.
No apostrophe.
And is it the guest
Yes,
one that we should
the guest.
use? Okay.
God's grace.
God's grace. Thank you.
We're probably coming up on deadlines for all of you, and you're probably not the only one, so let's get materials moving. We are moving it. I'm checking Basecamp at least 3 times a day. Pete and Evan are as well. We will move your stuff rapidly. Our designers, it seems to me, are right on top of things right now. There's not a backlog. In fact, I've seen a lot of same-day turnaround from them. And then just know, if you don't like what you get the first time, you're welcome. Comment right there in the discussion underneath where it's posted in Basecamp and say, you know what, these colors really don't work for us, change them. Or, hey, we really wrote the first paragraph incorrectly, please insert this text instead. You're welcome to do it right there and have that dialogue, and they respond very quickly, and we'll get a new version posted up for you. So you are not bound by what comes in from them the first time if you don't like it. We do try to keep edits to a minimum, so I do prefer that not everybody on your team sends in a different round of edits on Basecamp. I don't feel that's fair to our designers, especially when they start conflicting with one another. So I do ask that you as a team at least collaborate before you tell the designer to actually do something. You can collaborate on Basecamp all you want, just don't direct the designer to do anything until you've decided as a team that we're changing fonts and all those other things, okay? If you haven't done your pre-design form, go ahead and do that today and just load it so that we don't get delayed on that. Go ahead and get your Excel spreadsheet done if you haven't done that, so that we can do your graphs so that we're not delayed on that. And if you haven't loaded your pictures, please go ahead and load your pictures so that we're not waiting on pictures either. And please, please, please don't notify the whole world that you just did pictures. I just got 40 things that I had to go through in my Basecamp because a pastor in North Carolina that will remain nameless since I'm on video, I would have got a little more snarky if I weren't being recorded, but just decided to notify me and 240 other people, I think, that reposted pictures.
Does anyone need clarity about how to avoid that error?
When you post, there are 2 options: notify everyone, or let me choose who to notify. Please click let me choose who to notify, and then click don't notify anybody. Nobody cares that you're posting pictures. Trust me, nobody. All right. Now, when you're posting a document that you want me to review, notify me, notify Pete Royce, notify Evan Moylan. Make sure that we all know it's there so that one of us can get back to you. And by the way, if you've posted something for evaluation from us and you haven't heard within 24 hours, ping us, email us, text me, do something to get our attention, because something could have happened that we just, like, it might have been embedded in those 40 pictures that I just deleted, and I might have just lost it, okay? So if you haven't heard back, I have a 24-hour rule. If you haven't heard back in 24 hours, nag me. It's okay. It's what we're here for, all right? Anything else on material development? So we're 20 minutes in, we're not going to talk about your material development anymore unless you bring it back up, all right? What I want to discuss now and do is I want to talk about how can you have the best stewardship drive you've ever had in your life or in the history of your congregation, okay? And we're going to do a couple things. I'm going to run through a few things first, and then we're going to come back and we're going to kind of go congregation by congregation. But when we do that, please do not think that we're not talking to you when we're talking to that other congregation, because I'm going to kick out ideas and other things that are completely relevant for you and you should be doing, so that when we're talking about your stuff, we don't have to go through that whole thing again. Okay? Does that make sense? So kind of some of the things we're gonna talk about for certain. The first is temple talks. You notice in the outline on page 18 that at least 3 of the weeks we want to have a temple talk. That doesn't mean you can't add one on a week that we don't have one. You're allowed to adjust that way. But if the steps to a gift are to inform, to motivate, to ask, and to thank, what is the purpose of a temple talk? Anybody else? Motivate. Temple talks are your place where you have a chance to motivate. Motivation in text is kind of hard to do, okay? We Lutherans try to do that with all caps and exclamation points, but it really doesn't work that well. And so it is in the temple talk that we have a chance to inspire, all right? How does inspiration happen? The first key is to select the right person to do your talk, okay? I don't want to make stereotypes, but I often throw him under the bus. My dad's an accountant, great guy. Not the person you want for the inspirational temple talk. Might be the one that you want to explain the technicalities of an RMD from an IRA. He can do that pretty well, all right? But the inspirational story, he's just kind of not going there, all right? And so let's start there. So first is selection, and then pastors, this is where I think you will become fulfilled by stewardship if you invest time here. Because when you get to an inspiration temple talk, what you've gotten to is a deep faith story from somebody's life, all right? And you can help them get there. It doesn't mean lay people that you can't help them get there. I just think this is a fun place to insert a pastor to have fun with stewardship, because oftentimes they think it's just, a necessary evil to get to the other ministry. And so sitting down and coaching temple talks. Oftentimes our temple talks will become informational because that's the easy, comfortable place for somebody to go. That's the witness we've given. But if we sit down with someone and explore the story that they can tell that is more inspirational, we can get them there. Oftentimes, the way you get them there is by 6 times asking the same question or same statement. Tell me more about that, all right? To take the next layer of the onion off and to keep going deeper and then say we've gotten there. The other thing I like to do with them, I like to video all temple talks. Not necessarily for it to be live that way in worship. That's your style that needs to fit your place. But I like to video for 2 reasons. One, Chris will tell you, you just keep the film or the video running, and you get the best stuff when you're not expecting it. But you can also then say, hey, take 2. Let's talk more about this, all right? You can coach that way. And the other thing is, with worship trends as they are, we're getting about 1/3 of our people, I think, most of the time in worship, right? So that means you do 3 temple talks, you get 1/3 of your people every time. You have a lot of people that might have gotten 1 inspirational message, right? So we have to have a means to push messages out so that people can become inspired even if they didn't happen to come to worship that day, okay? So it extends the life of the inspirational piece that we've got. So I highly encourage all of that with your temple talks. We're going to talk about, I'm going to ask you if you've gotten a challenge or a matching gift. And if you haven't, I'm going to ask you why not, okay? Because you will change the complexion of your campaign by having a challenge or matching gift, and you'll also increase the effectiveness of it. When we don't do a challenge gift for number of intent cards returned, people think that the stewardship drive is primarily for the wealthy people that can make a difference financially, right? But when we set a goal of how many intent cards we want back, all of a sudden people that have the capacity to fill out an intent card feel like we're talking to them now as well, which is everyone, okay? So it will change the complexion of your campaign, that it's not just for a few, but it's for everyone, all right? So we'll talk about that a bit. Then we can do matching gifts if we have other things that we want to do, and I'll get into that scenario by scenario. Yes?
Have you ever used electronic intent cards?
Yes, and we're going to talk about that, but I'll go ahead and talk about it now. So do we use electronic intent cards? I think it's an awesome idea, but don't launch with that. I don't want anybody to see the electronic intent card until everybody has received in the mail the paper intent card. The paper intent card is designed specifically to help people make the best gift they can, and it comes with a letter asking them to participate. As soon as they receive that, make the link live that people can go to your website and fill out an intent card. You can do that as a fillable PDF. You can do that as a Google form. You can do it as simply as, hey, email me your intent. I mean, you can figure out the means for that, but by all means do that. This is kind of, it's the people that do this are getting older and older, because it's me now. I will respond. If you send me paper in the mail, my favorite way to respond is to go to your website and respond. But I'm not responding until I get the piece of paper in the mail. And so there is a link between the digital and the paper. Digital's so hard to graphically set up to do what we want that the paper can do, but make it live as soon as you have that, because once they have the paper, all we want's intents. And we don't care about signatures on stuff unless it's directing a bank to change something, because we don't sue people over unfulfilled pledges, because it's just not good practice, right? So we don't need a live signature. So did I get your answer? But I love digital response opportunity. We'll talk about if you're doing anything educationally or beyond, like are you trying to stimulate generosity discussions? Are your confirmands involved with interviewing people about gifting? Are you doing offering talks, which are 45-second talks that I've written around different topics of stewardship that stewardship team members can do as the offering plates are being handed out? I've got about 9 of them. Theoretically, they're in base camp, and if they're not, they will be by the time you get home. It's just a 45-second talk. My favorites, there's one on the biblical reasons to give, theological reasons to give, and the worship reason to give. I've got others too that I can't remember as well because my memory's going as I've been older. But, so I've got those. If you want to do some education there, we can do those. Ask letters, we're going to talk about. How are you actually crafting that ask letter? If not the way I want you to do it, how are you doing it? Because not everybody does things the way I want them to do it, but we're going to talk about how do we get closer to what I want versus where you might be going with it, so we'll talk about that. Then the collection of intent cards. You can mess up a stewardship drive at the end by not collecting intent cards well. Having a basket at the back door and telling people to drop it in on their way out is not an effective method of collection. A procession to the altar is great. The kids collecting them during the at the end of the children's sermon is my favorite. But we'll talk about that a little bit. Then we'll start talking about follow-up. How do you message this? Your follow-up method, you need to recognize, is still cultivation for people who haven't responded yet. Okay? So simply telling people, get your card in, is not necessarily growing their heart more to the ministry of your congregation. It might be the ultimate message you're hopeful for, but we need to start messaging what other people have done to help set the pace that you don't want to be the only one that doesn't grow your giving this year, do you? Now maybe don't say that directly, but say that through the messaging you do. And we'll talk a little bit about what that looks like. We already talked about opening up a Google form. And just so you know, stewardship often doesn't work well by just building in efficiency. I am a very efficient-minded person, and what I mean by that is don't say, oh, I'm sure we'll get some more intent cards next week, so we should wait until, January 20th to send any thank you letters out because we'd rather do them all as one batch. It'll be easier. Forget easier. Think about the donor and what do you need them to hear right away. We need them to hear thank you. We need them to hear you weren't alone, because nobody wants to be the only one to your congregation to grow in giving. I'm going to mention that a couple times today. Remember, nobody wants to be the only one to grow in giving. There was one other thought I had with that. Oh, we want them to know we're competent. That we can handle their money. And we can handle that, meaning we're going to send you a thank you note in a timely fashion because we pay attention to such things. Okay? So if you hold it till January 18th, people will think, man, do they even care that I gave? Right? And so we want to do that.
Can you hand them that note, or do you have to mail it to them?
You can hand it to them. So, preferably with a handwritten ballooning signature on the bottom of it, so, from a real live person, is even better. But yes, you can hand it to them. I normally give a second Sunday for intent cards to come in before I start nagging heavily. Because a third of people weren't there. And I use nagging as a very affectionate term of a great spiritual gift that God handed out. So hopefully somebody on your team has the spiritual gift of nagging, because you kind of have to do that until culture shifts. And culture will shift if you show people you're serious about this. Again, an intent or a challenge gift on a number of intent cards will also help shift your culture, because people will know that that's important. The other thing is a nice little thread about that you're going to start doing phoning to people that haven't returned a card by the second week, because the mere threat of a phone call will drive a number of intent cards to come in. And if you want to up your game even further than that, threaten a home visit to come and collect the intent card. People in many communities today really get threatened by that. So,
Mike?
Yeah.
What about naming a date for that was something that I've tried before too, where you say, if we don't hear from you by October 20th, then we're going to start.
And that's kind of what I meant by the second Sunday. The second Sunday is normally my date, and it's that afternoon or evening that I would start a phone-a-thon to families who haven't responded. But yeah, by all means, a date. And saying, hey, you can just email it to me. I've actually had people call the church and say, I really don't want a phone call. Which is a great thing. And what the church responded, great, well, we will not call you if you turn in your intent card. So simply turn in your intent card and you will avoid the call. We don't keep a do not call list in our churches. We simply ask people, because anybody can return an intent card. We didn't say you have to, we're going to call you if you don't increase your giving by $25 a week. That is not the message. The message is, if you turn in an intent card, we will thank you, and we will not call you. And just so you know, since my sense of humor isn't going over that well, when I say threaten people, I don't really mean that. Just want to make sure that's clear. So when you report back to people, share with them, hey, thanks for your gift. You were part of 48 families that already returned a gift. The average increase is $18.73 per family. We are over 2/3 of the way to our goal to increase by $1,100 a week. I made all those numbers up. I'm confident they don't actually work out. Because people want to know that they're not the only one that increased their giving this year. People want to know that you're doing well. People want to know that they're appreciated. And send that message to the whole congregation, because you're still cultivating those people that haven't returned a card yet to know that 48 families have already returned a card. The average increase is $18, and I don't remember how many cents I said, and that you're on your way towards your goal, and so it's a safe place to give, okay? I was with a congregation in Detroit that is not that unhealthy. They have about a $280,000 a year revenue budget. They have a $350,000 mortgage. And they have people in the congregation who think they're going out of business. All right? They need to hear that other people have stepped up and there's growth happening and that good things are happening. And that, I actually wasn't being snarky when I said this isn't that unhealthy of a place. It's not that unhealthy of a place. They're doing all right, but what people are internalizing as the message is it's not what it used to look like. And so we need to be telling people that there's growth happening, that there is generosity around them, and that there is a solid future because we live in an abundant world. Okay? So let's make sure we message that. Yeah.
When you're dealing with the growth, are you looking at year over year on pledges, or are you looking at comparing actual to new pledge?
So I'm looking at person to person, and this is critical. And I think I'll get to your whole question in just a minute. But I want to make sure that I first say, we're looking person to person, right? We're not looking, hey, last year on the first Sunday, we had 310,000. And this year on the first Sunday, we have 270,000. Therefore, we must be $40,000 down for next year. That, I don't know which church treasurer started that, but it got trendy. And it's just fictitious information that doesn't tell me, you know, what if all the wealthy people were at the Packers game? But there's actually growth person to person of $90,000 right there in those people. Like it's person to person. And you have to use your best judgment on what the best, most accurate number to use is, because everybody's different. Because my pledge for last year, I might be behind on it, but every year I give you half my pledge in December.
Yeah.
And so it's person to person, and what's your best, most accurate person to person number.
Okay.
Typically speaking, I prefer actual, but I also prefer the nuances of donors. You know, I'm a pretty easy donor. My bank sends a check the 15th of every month, and like that's what I give. It's pretty easy to track what I'm doing this year. There's no worry that I'm holding back and to see how the stock market does or anything. So I'm easy, but there are some very difficult people to figure out what their methodology is, right? So
It is true.
did I get your answer?
I think so, yeah.
It's not as formulaic as you might
Correct.
like, but person to person. I don't care how much you got the first Sunday last week versus the first Sunday this week. I care about what the donors who gave the first Sunday this week or this year give against what they did last year. Okay, that's what we're measuring. And if you have any struggles with that, call me and I'll walk you through it, or walk your financial people through it. Okay, you probably need to set up an Excel spreadsheet, have formulas already embedded in the spreadsheet, so that all you have to do is put in data, run it to the bottom, and you can see how you're doing. Okay. I think that's probably where I have a lot of energy, because I just want it to be what we're looking for. You're allowed to send emails as well to people, tagging them. Again, it's a good spiritual gift. And then what I like to do at the end is assign each stewardship person. Like, we've done the calls, we've done our real work, we're closing in on the goal. And then if every stewardship team member would just take 5 households to get the gift in, whatever it takes, kind of thing. That could be, you know, finding, you know, leaning against their car in the parking lot, you know, after worship, waiting to have a conversation, or, you know, just seeking them out, or saying, you know what, I'm in a Bible study on Wednesdays with them, I'll mention it to them again. But to see to it for that. And by all means, if you have a challenge gift for number of intent cards, don't stop nagging until you reach the goal, or until you recognize that you set the goal inappropriately, okay? And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So, and then celebration. From a what do we share at that, we share our best story, okay? Our best story might be the number of intent cards back. I really hope that's not our best story. The best story might be that the average, you know, net increase is $19 a person. The best story might be that we exceeded our $1,000 elite growth goal by $100 a week. Our best story might be that 3 families grew by 2,000% or more. I don't know what our best story is. We're going to have to look for it in what comes back. Beyond that, what do you do for a celebration? I don't really have any idea. This is where I'd love you all to be creative. My favorite one is, it's a pastor in DC that I talk a lot about. She brought in a food truck. And I don't remember exactly what it was. There was an item from the food truck that everybody got a coupon for, that they could go to the food truck and get that item free. I don't remember. I feel like it was funnel cake, but I'm not sure what it was. But then a lot of families then bought lunch and went home with lunch off the food truck, and people loved it. She also had a lot of helium and balloons all over the place, and just made a festive atmosphere. We'll see what y'all are doing, but those are some of the things that I'm looking for you to have the best drive you can have. And again, to get to a gift, first you have to identify who you're going to ask. The church, it's easy. It's the people that show up. It's the people that gave last year. It's your members. Then you have to inform them. That's our bulletin inserts. That's our brochures. That's our letters. We've got that. We have to inspire them. Temple Talks is our primary place. Pastors, you can work some inspiration into your sermons. And certainly you may have other ways that you're doing that, telling the outcome stories of what God's up to in your congregation. We need to ask, and that doesn't, for me, involve simply saying we're asking for you to return an intent card. But we want you to consider a gift that you might increase by so that we get there. And then we need to thank people. And that's what happens as soon as we get the intent card. We begin thanking people. So that's, again, identify, inform, inspire, ask, thank. And you should, I hope you'll have a true sense of how you're doing on each of those, okay? I had one congregation, one of the greatest learnings that they had was on the identify part. They thought they had 147 families, they had 80. That was an important learning. That would have been nice to have known before we asked people for their gift and set the goal, but we came out of there with a pretty good learning as to who they actually had. Most of the time you're going to inform just fine, okay? So don't put all your energy into that, all right? Inspire and ask are probably the two biggest challenges we have. And we'll go from there, all right? So let's talk specifics. Who wants to go first? Holy Cross. Here at my right hand.
All right.
So, anything we need to know about your print material?
I already told you. So that's done. It's in
It's behind
process.
us. All right.
Yep.
What are you doing with Temple Talks?
We are having one person so far, because our first one is a Sunday.
Okay.
So I have one individual who's going to be talking about being involved in a variety of activities that affect multi-generational and youth.
Will they be telling outcome stories from it or just the information of it?
She will be telling, I just read a rough draft. We're going to work
Okay.
on that a little more,
Yeah,
but
good.
it'll be more outcomes.
Oh, you saw a rough draft?
Yeah.
See, we're supposed to listen to others as we do, okay? It's Tuesday, right?
Yep.
And they're not on till Sunday and you got a rough draft already?
One of the things that since we met last time, we decreased our goal by 20,000 when I realized that some people were retiring that I wasn't aware of
Okay.
and some things like that. So fortunately,
Yeah.
so we're at a different goal. But anyway, so that's done. I need to do a little more on the inspire part.
Okay. I want to give, because of what you just said, I want to give you one thing to think about as you think, all right? Now, I don't want to assume these retirees are going to give less, necessarily. Some people, pastors primarily, end up with more income in retirement than they had during their working. So not every retiree has to give less. But if it is the case that you have some significant loss of giving, either from retiree, people moving away, or people dying,
Right.
when you report out, it's important to let people know that of that decrease and some of the reason why, right? We don't ever want to say, well, Sarah retired this year, therefore giving is down. But to say it in a broad enough stroke that people can say, oh, so I increased my giving to kind of make up for some loss, and that's why we're not making as much traction as we would like, okay? Critical message. It's critical for you, it's actually critical on the synodical level as well. I'm working with a different synod that the messaging was, where's all the money going, people? Why aren't you giving more mission support? There were only 5 out of 112, I think it was, churches that decreased mission support. Only 5. Now those 5 decreased by $65,000. So all the others going, why are we bothering being more generous? Everybody around us is decreasing. That's not a very good feeling, right? From an individual or from a congregation. So we have to make sure people understand why there might be some decrease.
I have 2 specific questions. One is for the challenge gift.
Yeah.
We're asking people to give over and above what they would give for the year. So for the increasing the amount of pledge cards, are we saying if you give 10,000, we want we're asking for individuals to give 5,000 for that challenge gift.
Oh, so,
That's over and
so
above.
as you're asking for the challenge
Yeah.
gift, yes, it ought to be over and above their current level of giving.
Okay,
But it could be a group of people, right?
right.
So
So
it'd be like a group, like council together or stewardship together,
It
saying,
can-
hey, we're gonna increase by this much, we'll match. I don't know.
So let's talk about this a little bit. It is okay for it to be a group of people. It loses a little bit of its punch if it's a group of, how many are on your council?
Too many.
Okay. So let's say you have 15 on your council and you come up with a $5,000 challenge gift. There's going to be a few people in the congregation like me going, well, if they could all do $700, why don't they just grow their giving instead? Okay, so now it has an effect, don't get me wrong, but it's not quite as much as saying, hey, 2 families in the congregation have stepped up with a $5,000 challenge gift in order for this to happen. Again, it just loses a little punch, but it is okay. Now, if your council does that, are any of y'all on council?
Yeah.
Okay, just don't listen for a second, okay? After you achieve it, say, hey, thanks for the challenge gift. I expect you to just make that your normal new giving level next year, okay? See, and that's the thing of it, which makes it not quite as challenging as that one time, but it's fine. I mean, you've never done one of these before, right?
No.
It'll get people's attention, right? But just in future years, single donor, 2 donors, whatever, would be good. Yes.
Second question, we really struggled over the second ask letter
Mhm.
when we're asking for a specific
Mhm.
dollar amount. I mean, we just kind of froze on that, like, what do we do? In terms of how do we,
I've never heard that from
How do we
anybody before.
segment
Yeah.
that, right?
yeah, well,
It's a tough room.
so.
They
yeah.
all thought that.
If you could enlighten us,
Yes.
the
Decaf
anxiety level
coffee.
on our team might go down a little.
Yeah, so we are fearful that when we ask somebody for a specific amount, that we will offend them.
Correct.
Yet we have never thought about how many people were offended by not asking. How much is your annual budget for your Holy Cross? It's about $900,000.
1.2.
Oh, I'm sorry to undershoot you so much. So when you tell people you need $1.2 million, what percentage of your congregation can't even fathom that kind of money? At least 50%, right? By not asking them, what are they feeling about their contribution to the congregation? Doesn't matter. What does it matter if I give $50 or $300? Makes no difference to them because it's 1.2 million. You know, who cares? And that's why you've got a bunch of, I don't want to use that necessarily. You've got a bunch of donors that aren't being as intentional as they can be because they've not been asked for that gift. And in fact, I would tell you that a lot of your donors feel shame about their giving, which is a terrible feeling to give people from the church, in my opinion. So the wording of, would you consider a gift? Anybody can consider anything, okay? Now, I don't want somebody who recently lost their spouse to consider any type of gift right now. I would like their letter to say, hey, we know it's a tough time, you know, since Sarah died. We don't want you to feel excluded from the stewardship drive, but we also recognize this might not be the time for you to consider increasing. We're confident you'll be as generous as you can be moving forward. We're praying for you. That'd be the greatest letter you could give somebody if they're within at least 6 months of a loss, right? Or same thing if you lost a job, or if you're going through divorce. I mean, we want those people to consider that we're considering where you are in life, and we're not here to make a decision for you, but we're also not here to push you so much. Now, if somebody just got a promotion at work, I might ask them to consider a lot more money than somebody else that's not. But the other piece of it is a lot of your smaller donors in particular have never really thought about the cumulative effect of giving. So by asking them, somebody who currently gives $200 a year to your congregation, to ask them to consider increasing by $1 a day will cause them to more than double their giving and to recognize that they can accomplish that, okay? They're not offended by it. They're grateful that somebody let them know what was expected. Usually your top 3 to 5 donors, I won't ask for a specific amount. I will simply say, thanks for your generosity. You're obviously able to, you know, determine what we're doing and determine your generosity towards that. That's fantastic. So those I kind of leave pretty open-ended. But then beyond that, I'll normally go through the entire roster with formulas, right? Based on where the current level of giving is. Here's a place where I think we often mess up. Hey, we need to grow by 5% next year, so everybody grow by 5%. Right? Have you ever heard that one before? Right? All right, donor that's giving $20,000 a year, what's 5% of that? $1,000? They can actually probably, they can afford it, but it's probably not fair. Well, the person currently giving $100 a year, do you really want them to grow by 5%? I mean, what difference to your $1.2 million budget does that make? And what difference does it make to their spiritual development to grow by $5, right? I mean, that's a foot long at Subway. I mean, is all that is across the course of an entire year. So that's not helpful. So I go through with a formula, top 3 to 5 donors, I just tell them to continue that generosity. The next group of 10 donors probably grow by 5%. Next group of donors, 10 to 15%. Next group of donors, 15 to 25%. Till I'm getting to about $1,000 a year where I'm asking people to grow probably $700 to $1,200 a year. And then when I'm below anybody giving $300 a year or less, I'm asking to give $1 a day more. A little more context for that. I used to be VP of Advancement for the camps in Region 9, which is the Southeast US. When I went to visit a donor, if they currently gave $500 a year, do you know how much I asked them for this coming year?
1,000.
Yep. Just, unless it, like, I saw the vehicles in the driveway on the way in and I thought that wasn't even enough, right? No, my initial ask was double, right? Currently $1,000 a year donor, do you know how much I would ask them for next year? Have I told you about the $2,500 Cornerstone Giving Club? No, that would be my intro line. Not the first thing I said, but my intro to the ask line. So it's okay to ask people for more than that. And most of the time, if I was visiting them, you know what they said?
Okay.
Yeah. Or I can't quite get that far, but I'll go to 2,000 next year and see if I can't get to Cornerstone the year after. Oh, that's all right. Yeah.
What about zero givers?
Don't invest all of your time in $0 givers right now.
I still
$0.
send them the stuff though?
You know what? It's not going to hurt anything. They're probably going to ignore it, but go ahead.
Yeah, okay.
But this is really important. We don't totally ignore $0 donors. Asking somebody to go from a non-donor to a pledge donor, it's an unlikely move. Do you remember actually, I've never done this at this time. I've gotten a question before. Look at page 11. For those of you that have it, it's the pyramid of giving chart. So non-donors are currently at the bottom of the pyramid, right? Total number of donor or prospects on record. Pledge donors skips over first time, skips over periodic, and goes to regular. It's a long jump for somebody to move. Okay? I would rather I'd rather work the pyramid. I would rather get a non-donor to make a gift. So if I look at my roster and I realize that all of my non-donors are retirees that are part of the older, wiser Lutheran group, which is probably very unlikely, but I wanted to pick on somebody besides parents of young children, okay? And so let's say they're all in the older, wiser Lutheran group. Instead of asking them to pledge to the annual fund, I'd rather send a direct appeal that says, hey, I would like for you to invest in the older, wiser Lutheran group so that we can have chairs that have padding on them when you come to gather, instead of these chairs that are hard to sit on for longer than an hour. Okay? I mean, I'd rather tailor the ask to something that they would respond to than pledge to the annual fund. Because it's just a harder push. And so but once I get them as a periodic donor, you know what I want then? Hey, have I shared with you our information about electronic giving so I can get them as electronic? I mean, so you need to be working them up the pyramid, but man, it's like, hey, I know you've never given to us, but would you leave us 10% of your estate? I mean, it's just, that's a couple more rungs up the ladder, but it's kind of what we're doing when we keep, because they keep saying no to us on the pledge. Let's try to get in a different way. You have a question?
When you were going over how you would begin your ask on different levels, is that written anywhere?
It is, and I'll post it because apparently I haven't. And it's called If Asking by Formula. okay? I appreciate the question because I want to come back to that. So let's say you create your Excel spreadsheet and you break people up into these different categories, so you're going to apply these different percentages to what the ask amount might be. Please, once you cut and paste and come up with the ask amounts, go through donor by donor and say, is this really appropriate? Hey, just lost a spouse. Hey, going through divorce. Hey, won the lottery. Let's ask for more. I mean, let's, you know, and actually all of you have donors who are grossly underperforming their capacity, okay? And so some of those, you know, I might want to ask for 50% increase instead of 15% increase, just because I know they just made $1 million gift to their college and they're only giving us $100 a year. I mean, that's information. If you've got it, get where you want to go. Yeah.
The other comment that came up when we were planning for that, when we kind of hit the road bump on that letter, was we gotta make sure we get the dollar amounts right too. Like you don't want, like for instance, if somebody, I'll use myself as an example, I give normal, you know, automatic simply giving, and then there might be a year-end piece. There's a piece that comes from the United Way campaign where I name the church as one of the. So I think the number might not be accurately what I'm actually giving, and I think you could insult people that way. So I mean, they would know that, but we wanted to spend a little extra time on making sure the numbers, if we're going to personalize every letter, and it sounds, this isn't like 2 or 3 letters, this is individualized letter every single person, right?
Yeah, we don't do, I don't like dear friend letters.
Okay. But this is like, our records say you gave this, we're looking for this.
So in a case like yours, you are a little more complex donor, and thank you for that. But we can personalize and mention that. And it could be to say, hey, we appreciate all the ways in which we notice that you're faithfully generous. We do seek to grow by $2,000 a week next year. And you might be one of those that's customized to be, you're darn generous. Here's our need, why don't you figure it out, kind of thing. I mean, it's going to say it a little nicer than that. But a donor like me, I'm pretty easy, right? Well, I'm challenging in that you got to ask well, or else I'm going to ignore you. But I'm every month the same amount.
Right.
Here we go. You know, so it is looking and knowing. It's knowing your donor. You know. And the other thing with this is your donors in the middle 50 and below, they're not that complicated. In fact, many of them, the problem is their randomness, right? It's not their intentional randomness, which was what you just described. It's just they give when they're here, and if they're not here, they're not giving, right? And so it is that when you grow by $1 a day. So the ask is actually, I mean, you're going to get good dollar increases from the upper, but it's actually more critical for the people who probably aren't serving on the stewardship team, right? And so that I'd encourage the team to think about that as you look at this. So now I don't know where you're going to come. I mean, so I'm not so dumb to think that you might say we're not doing personal numbers this year. Please let people know what they might do, right? That it's not 5% for everybody. That there are a lot of people that need to consider a number. You know, you would actually get darn close to your goal if every family in your congregation, well, actually you'd exceed your goal, I think, if every family in your congregation grew by $1 a day. But I'd give people definitely some examples beyond that, right? And actually your story of generosity could be one that helps stimulate some others, that I give regularly, plus I give extra because of this and this in my life, right? In Chicago, we ask for that kind of base rate plus percentage of bonuses because I think everybody that works in Chicago gets a bonus. And so, I mean, it is about knowing your people and how they're able to give, but the number, I think, for you all is probably most critical, 50% and below. By the way, there's a question that we like on the graphs that says, could you consider doubling your giving this year? It's the most frequent one that we see churches take off because the people on the stewardship team are like, well, how in the world can anybody double their giving? because you're interpreting it from your own personal giving, that question isn't for you. But if you're giving $100 a year, you can consider growing your giving. And how many donors do you have giving $5 a week and less? You've got a lot, right?
Almost to 199.
You've got 199 people that you're having that question go to, and actually some people in a little higher category as well. So we need, one of the hardest things for me to learn when I was VP of Advancement is not everybody's me. So, I might have still been a toddler when I was, 38, but, not everybody gives the same way I do, and we need to be addressing other people besides ourselves. So, good.
Can I ask a question about the temple talks?
Yeah.
Like, should the temple talks align to our goals and inserts? So for that week,
if they inspire, I don't care what they do.
Okay. Yeah, perfect. Yeah.
And there are probably people in the room that say, well, of course they have to align. Well, maybe they're right, but if they inspire, I don't care. Yeah.
In developing these individual ask-for amounts, is it appropriate and beneficial to look at growth in that person or that family's activities in the church? They just joined the choir. You had a funeral for their family this year. Somebody was confirmed. Can those kinds of things be?
Absolutely. Absolutely you can. A couple thoughts. One is it often goes the other direction.
Yeah.
And often, if Jesus is right, where your treasure is, your heart will be. The treasure comes first and then the engagement. For where you're going, I think is even more critical when you have a tangible, specific project aligned. Like a way to get somebody to grow out of the $30 a week category to $70 a week is by a special gift investing in the youth ministry, because that's what their passion is, or something along those lines. And that's more special gift appeal, and we're going to talk more about that after the first of the year. But certainly, if you recognize that somebody all of a sudden, the kids got their parents involved in church differently, then they might, even though my formula might say 20%, go ahead and ask them for 50%, because obviously something's going on in their life, and you might as well try. So, good. All right, I'm going to pick on somebody else for a little while, if that's okay.
Thank you for answering.
Sure. So Bayshore, I think, is the other half of the group. Good job getting folks here when you're hosting. Who wants to be primary? All right.
So when you drove here this morning into Whitefish Bay, my guess is that some of you may have thought, gosh, what a wonderful, beautiful suburb of Milwaukee. You might have thought, there's incredible abundance in this community. The team knows that. We're aware of that. We're not sure our congregation feels that abundance in their own lives, in their own giving. That's our big concern right now, is communicating to our leadership, specifically our finance team and then our council, the sense of we have it here. It's here. Because for years and years, when we get to that tough time, we retreat to cut and cut and cut. So what's going on here right now is really big. We've had some really good conversations. I think we're making some progress with our finance team. They're the ones who present the budget to the council. We're going to sit down with them again Monday night, because we've generated a pretty nice list of things that we need to do to get to excellence. And we had a temple talk where we brought the topic of excellence up to the congregation. We're kind of done with cut. We're now in a mode of let's get to excellence. And I think we've opened up some ears. We've got some pushback on that. Tim, you're going too fast. It's a little too quick. But I think this team, which is really motivated, wants to get to excellence. So we've talked to our council. They're, I think, and jump in, Bayshore folks, a little bit more, maybe even quite a bit more receptive to that guide of excellence. But the people who do the budget.
I love this, thank you. First off, we're not going to cut our way to the kingdom of God. Right?
That's a great line.
So
Thank you.
it's going to be the title of my
tagline.
it's going to be the title of my next stewardship workshop. I am pretty proud of that one.
Yeah.
I have to give a little credit to somebody, but he's not here today, so I'm not going to give it to him. But we're not going to cut our way to the kingdom of God. Finance committee, I've had a hate-hate relationship with finance committees over time. I'm getting to respect them a little bit more. I've kind of mellowed a wee bit. I just want them to stay in their lane. Their lane is the expense side. They've taken the entire side because of a lack of leadership. And I've come to recognize that since nobody else was doing it, they take it upon themselves. But their finance committees are expense side people. I mean, just, that's why you serve on a, my dad's an expense side guy. He told me I gave away too much money. That's when I fired him as my accountant. Still my dad, still love him, but he doesn't get to deal with that side anymore. They need to stay in their lane. They need to tell you what you can spend. Or they need to at least alert leadership to how we're spending money. Leadership then gets to make decisions on, well, do we give more, or are they right? We have to cut our way to the kingdom, which doesn't happen. So, I think the way we need to inspire the congregation is to show them what generosity looks like. Have you slated all your temple talks?
We haven't.
Good answer. That's what I was going for. Let's find some people that recognize abundance. You see, if I were to ask all of you how you learn generosity, some of you would have great stories from the ways in which your parents taught you to be generous. Many of you wouldn't have that background. And so those of you without that background, how would you learn to be generous, since nobody in America talks about money except for our politicians who tell you you don't have enough of it, but if you elect me, you'll get more. Political seasons is a terrible time to try to convince people of, I think we should preach the feeding of the 5,000 every Sunday during an election season, because we just have to show people that there is enough. Anyway, that's enough politics for the day, but I didn't take any political party, you will know. So let's lead people there. Let's find somebody with just a deep generosity story of living a life where they know they're not worried about tomorrow, and they learn how to give, and why it's a deep passion to give, and how they're going to personally make a decision to give even more. But then let's, as a stewardship team, since it feels like y'all have it a little bit better, let's have you lead the council. So on Sunday week, I'll have to look at the chart again to make sure I'm right. Sunday week 2 or Sunday week 3, why don't you as a stewardship gather together in somebody's house, drink some wine if you're old enough, and make your commitments then. And then go to the council and say, the stewardship team, we're 100% in. We had 100% growth. All of us grew in our giving for a net increase per family averaging this, and we'd like you now to join us in that generosity. You all can lead it. So this is what leadership is. You all can lead. Normally I'd say the council gets to lead, but I think in your case I'm going to let the stewardship team lead the council, and then the council can lead the congregation. All right? So show them what that is, then ask them to come together and do the same thing the next week. And then when you're messaging to the congregation, it can be, we've had 23 leaders of this congregation already give. 100% of them have grown in generosity. I'll come back to that phrase in just a minute. And towards our $1,000 a week, whatever your goal is, we've got net this much towards that goal. It's an abundant world. We're turning loaves and fish into food for everybody. Let's go. Okay? Does that sound all right?
That sounds amazing.
So I use the phrase growth and generosity. There could be somebody on your stewardship team or on your council who is experiencing a recent death, a divorce, uncertainty in a job. They can grow in generosity without the dollar increase going up. Okay? That can be a commitment to say, you know what, going through a divorce, I don't know what that's going to look like, but I promise on the other side of it, I'm going to give a larger percentage away than I did going into it. So I'm growing in my generosity next year. That is all they need to say. Because that's a crappy time to make a giving decision, I don't know. So to me, that is growth and generosity. And that can be celebrated. It doesn't have to be dollars. So that phrase, we're all growing in generosity, it can be true even if there's a net dollar loss in a donor or two. Because I want churches to do council leadership differently, but I don't want us to go to the model where you only elect rich people. I don't think that's where the church should be. So I think if you can lead that way, I think you can really help this congregation. So Temple Talks, less about the ministry initiatives and more about generosity. One church I'm working with, it's a church right down the street from me, but I'm not a member, so they actually listen to me, and we get along well. They had a similar issue. They had 2 families grow last year by 300% or more. So one of those families with children in the home kind of thing, they shared their story about how they discerned a way to grow by that much and what it meant to their family and what it means to them now in their participation with the church to have grown in their giving by that much. They had a retired person. He had to get his wife's permission, but he got permission. He's allowed to tell his story. In the last 6 years, they've doubled their giving. They didn't get a raise. Well, what did Social Security go up? Like 0.2% or whatever? I mean, that's all they got. But it was priorities. And that was the theme of his talk is, for us it was priorities. And in 6 years, we've managed to double our giving, not because we got more money, but because we figured out a better way to spend and invest our money and to be more engaged in the ministry here at Grace. And so those stories aren't often told, and a lot of people buy into the myth, fixed income, I can't do anymore. And there are people that probably can't, but there are plenty of people who it's priorities, and it's how do you live, and it's those kinds of things. So let's find those stories, let's tell them, and let's mentor one another instead of just assuming that, instead of just modeling what our parents did. Unless, of course, your parents were just, giving 50% of their income away, then model away for after your parents. But not everybody had the benefit of generous parents, because those parents didn't have the benefit of generous parents, and the cycle just won't break unless we talk about it, and we talk about it in a way other than you don't have enough money and it's not enough, and you should fear tomorrow. I'm so sick of these anti-biblical messages getting in and affecting the church. So it's our story. Good. Anything else at Bayshore? That was good stuff.
Thank you.
No, seriously, anything else we need to?
We picked our theme. I don't think the writing of the materials is going to be problematic.
Okay.
Now that we've settled on our theme, which we've stolen from somebody in the room, but that's the big issue is leadership and culture change and taking some risks.
Yeah.
So,
good. Are you looking at a challenge gift?
I'm not aware that we have, and so that's work we have to do.
I mean, it's something we gotta consider, but honestly, Tim summarized something that's taken like 2 months of us to get through with the finance committee. So, very good summary, but it's been a hard 2 months.
Okay. So, are you like a glutton for punishment, just looking to take another risk? Because I got another idea for you.
Go ahead.
I'm ready.
Ask the finance committee for the challenge gift. And I'm actually serious about this. Because they don't believe other people are going to be generous. And so say, you know what, you don't have to be more generous until we demonstrate that generosity to you. And I would say that right to them. But if we demonstrate that generosity to you, I want you to step up and do it. So ask the finance, are there like 5 old grouchy men on the team? That's
Hit pause on the recording.
We're not showing, they're not advanced.
Technical difficulty.
They're not advanced. So, I mean,
It's brilliant. I love it.
Yeah.
So just say, $1,000 each as a challenge gift. If we get, even give them a number of intent cards demonstrating an increase, right? The old grouchy guy at a church in South Carolina sent a letter to the council when they hired me. What a waste of money. Our people are giving all they can. Nobody can grow in their giving. Stop it, stop it, stop it. Council wrote a beautiful letter. Thanks for your opinion. We disagree, and we're going to see. Congregation, the average worship 150 people. They grew by $60,000. They had a single donor that decreased their giving last year. Do you want to have any guess who it was? So he tried to make it a self-fulfilling prophecy, and by getting them to be the challenge gift, it can't be a self-fulfilling prophecy that there's not growth. Anyway, I'm serious about that if you're willing to try it, but it gives them the ability. You don't have to grow if the rest of us don't.
Our theme is imagine, and ever since we've been talking, I'm just imagining this team making its gift, our council doing the same thing, and then challenging. I mean, that's a great imagine for us this morning.
Okay.
So thank you. That's
cool.
Awesome.
And this is kind of a way that the collaboration comes together, because the response I just gave you came because of a congregation in the Detroit area that's afraid they're going to shut down. And they've got these donors who are afraid to give to it. and I'm wanting their challenge, which is how I just applied that to you guys. So it does all work together. It's just really kind of cool and fun to pull together. So good. All right.
First United
From
Sheboygan.
which is just one of those towns that's fun for people from the South to say. So I don't know if you like it, but
Sheboygan's awesome.
All right, good. How you doing?
We're doing good. We turned in all our stuff this morning. So all the bulletin inserts,
Nothing like cramming
the
for the test,
brochure,
right?
the what?
Nothing like cramming for the test.
Nothing like cramming, right? So turn that all in to Peter. We didn't realize that the brochure had to go first, so we were working on all the letters and bulletin inserts before the brochure. So we just sent it all in to Peter this morning. So he's gonna have fun when he opens his email.
That's fine. Just know it's easier to do brochure first and then have everything come out of it. But if you want to work harder, sorry.
We just didn't realize. We didn't gather that at our last session. That the brochure came first. We thought it came
All right,
last.
that's all right.
So that's where we are on that. Everything's going pretty smoothly. We picked the amount. We've done the little bar graph thingy.
Okay.
And figured out sort of what we're targeting. We'll send that to Peter later today. It was on the wrong computer, so slight computer issue.
All right.
I don't know. What else do you want to know?
Tell me, with you, I want to pick on how are you going to follow up?
How are we going to follow up? We have not figured that out yet. We are more looking, when you say follow up, do you mean after the pledges?
After the first Sunday of intent cards coming in, what's your plan?
We were going to probably threaten to call people.
Okay.
Because we thought that seemed like something most of our folks would really want to avoid. We were also looking at, and one of the things we were currently trying to figure out is we were looking at segmenting out the type of communication to the person. In other words, go with the different segments, and we haven't picked exactly what those parameters are going to be, but probably our higher end givers get a face-to-face time.
Okay.
And then another segment, as you work your way down, would get a phone call, and so on and so forth. So lighter touch, lower on the pyramid, bigger touch, higher on that pyramid that we're looking at on page 11.
Okay. Good. What's your growth goal?
100,000.
How many families?
Of giving or intents?
How many families give a year?
444.
Okay. Have you done the math to know what the average increase needs to be?
The average increase per week, about 1,400, or about... No.
Per family per week, how much?
Per family per week? We have, I'm just trying to remember what it is.
Well, don't you dare give it to people, but it's it's under $3.
Yeah, no, it's not.
That's not that much money.
No, because we have to go, we're bringing in like 10,000 a week, we need to go to like 1,400, like, no, sorry, like, 10,000 to like 14,000 or something. There's a $4,000 increase is what it was, or per week.
100,000 would be 2,000 a week.
Oh, 2,000? Okay. Maybe, sorry, I just multiplied that wrong there.
I think you have a critical, because of the size congregation, $100,000 sounds like a ton of money. Like, when's the last time you grew by $100,000 there?
In intents, we grew 87,000 last
year.
Oh,
did you? Oh, good. Okay.
In intents. Again, this is intents versus actual giving. There's obviously change of correspondence there because we raise around we raise 700 to 800,000 in actual giving per year, and but our intents are usually closer to the 500,000 route. Now we moved it to the 580s, 590s territory with our drive last time route.
Okay. Good information. Are you doing a challenge gift of any kind?
We hadn't really thought through that.
So you may still have a little bit of growth to capture from more people turning in an intent.
Yeah,
you're doing pretty well. I mean, once you hit about 75%, you're about there. Unless you're a congregation with 30 families, I mean, then you can go beyond that. But in a larger congregation, 75% is about where you've maxed out. So I might do a $5,000 challenge gift to get, another, or actually here's what I would do. I would do $100 per card over card number 570.
$100 per card over card 570.
And I made the number up, however many intent cards you had last year.
So no, again, you asked how many givers we had, which is the 444.
Oh, I made
the intent cards was 205.
I totally got lost in numbers. I'm sorry. So it's $100 per card over card number 205.
Okay.
Okay. So that assumes the 205, and then after that, it's $100 per card. And if you get more than 50 cards over that, go get another challenge gift and keep it going.
So if we get over 255, then the challenge.
Go find another one. Go find another challenge gift and keep it going because it's obviously working. The other thing you may consider is $100 per card over 205 cards that demonstrated an increase in generosity. So you don't get people to. Yeah, and I don't want people's 3-year-old kids turning in pledge cards just to hit a number. I mean, I don't play games and stuff like that. So, so that might be a route to go. Do you have a lot of donors $5 a week or less?
Yes.
So here's the other. This may be for you guys. Well, maybe for all of you. This is often a second-year thing, but I think with what you're telling me on intent cards, it may be a worthy route. This church I told you about that's right down the street from me that actually listens. Last year, they got $20,000 worth of matching money, dollar for dollar match, on the increase for people who currently give $30 a week or less. So it was a segment within, actually, it might have been $20 a week or less. Don't quote me on the number. So one of those categories that they wanted to drastically increase the amount of money from. So they had $20,000, 4 donors gave $20,000. They weren't all $5,000. You know, I think one gave $7,500, and I mean, it worked out to $20,000. They subscribed $16,000 of that match. So the people in those bottom categories grew giving by $16,000. That was then matched by another 16 to make $32,000. In that category of money, that is huge. For those donors, that is huge, right? For their faith and generosity journeys, that's a dramatic increase for those people. So I think that might be a leverage route for you to go. So you might ask me, well, how do you do that when it's only available to certain donors? Well, that letter number 2 that goes to people, it's just a different segment that highlights that they're good news. Your gift is eligible for a match, dollar for dollar on whatever you increase by. And then when you do a phone-a-thon to those people at the end to get their gift in, the phoner simply knows that there's a challenge gift available for their increase. You have to tell the phoner what they gave. You just have to simply say this person qualified for the matching money. This church down the street from me, they did make a public announcement about it, and they said if you don't qualify, thanks for already being in a category that doesn't qualify for that, but some of our donors are eligible for a match this year. Please pay attention. I find nothing wrong with that. And in fact, my personality would be to announce it to everybody, because the fact that you have $20,000 in matching money for this category is going to please a number of your larger donors, because you're doing something very intentional to grow the generosity overall for the congregation, and they would like to know that they're not going to be as lonely in the future. So
That's a good point.
I mean,
Was it sustainable a second year?
I'll tell you after this year. But we think so. And in fact, the story of the family that grew by 300%, they were one that responded to this.
Okay.
So are you worried about the $100,000 number? You sort of stepped back there when we first
No, it's $2.10 a family. But don't ever tell anybody that.
No, I just want to make sure you didn't think it was too high.
No, it's too low.
Okay. No, there has been a long debate over what number to pick.
It's a great goal.
Okay.
I do want you to stress it's $2,000 a week. Yeah. And I think it's fine for you to say it's $2,000 a week and we have 440 families here. People can do the math for them, but please don't ever say it's $2.50.
Oh, no, we're definitely not telling people.
Because that would be delightfully easy for me, and it's probably not hard for anybody. But in case it is hard, I don't want them to. We're not called to equal giving; it's equal sacrifice, and I want you to make sure that people need to see how tangible and easy it is, but don't tell them it's only. I mean, I've heard that before. That's why I'm so much stressing. Don't tell people that, because I've heard it, and it will stifle giving.
Yeah, and part of our reality is we are a really young congregation overall. Like our median age is 37.
Cool. So get some 37-year-olds to talk about how it is they've figured out how to be generous.
That was going to be sort of my question: is it okay? Because it looks like as we're looking for Temple Talk folks that we're skewing pretty young, but that's true of who's going to be sitting there.
Get them. Yes.
Okay.
And from a standpoint of how can they mentor others to become generous.
Okay.
I think it's the primary thing. I mean, anybody can tell the outcome of the ministry, but I think if you need more donors to look like them, to say, You know, and I don't want, just so you know, I don't personally want the story about tithing.
Yeah.
Because there's so few people who do that I think we just tune that right out. I want the story of struggle. Hey, last year we tried to figure out how to give more, and so this is what we figured out, and it turned out we could do that. You know.
So should the Temple Talk then focus more on because our original thought was to focus on the ministries that we're highlighting and talk about how those are really changing people's lives. Should it be more that oriented, and then you know, you have your sample bulletin insert that's going to match it, that's going to say, okay, hey, we just heard about the amazing things that ASP is doing. You know, when you support the church, you're supporting things like this. You know, is it more that sort of continuity, or is it more like, I'm going to talk more generically about giving, here's my bulletin insert that talks about the cool ministry and how God's working in the world with the money you give? Or does it not matter?
Oh, I think it matters.
Okay.
I think our churches have to get better at telling our outcome stories.
Okay.
And I think the Stewardship Drive is a fine place to do it. I also think year-round is a fine place to do it.
Absolutely.
I also think you need to, this is where I just can't give you a one-size-fits-all.
That's
You need
fair.
to discern what is the thing that is most hindering our families from growing in their giving. Do they need mentoring and inspiration of people figuring out their generosity story, or do they need to be stimulated by the ministry outcome story? I think it's easier for you to, I think it's easier to work into sermons, the outcome story, than the generosity story. So that can become a replacement. Or you can utilize video to better tell one story or the other. I have one congregation that the Temple Talks are remaining outcome stories, because that's the feeling they want to give in worship. But they're doing supplements in video of generosity stories that are being pushed out each week during the appeal that aren't the Temple Talk, but they're the generosity story. And they're actually trying to get integration with Facebook, social stuff to...
Yeah, so, okay, so then we have a fairly good footprint on Facebook. We're currently trying to catch up with the Synod. That's our current goal.
Nice.
And so we do have a large community there, because we're about 800, 900 follower territory.
That's great.
And so we are looking at going ahead, and would you think it'd be a good idea then to maybe do individual videos, because we do a lot of these sort of individual tailored videos of generosity, and then do the inspirational side as the Temple Talks, or or mix them up either way. You know, maybe have complementary videos going on Facebook and Instagram.
I think that's a great idea. I think you need to figure it out. If I were making the decision, I would keep worship outcome story.
Okay.
And I'd keep Facebook as generosity.
Okay, that's what I was
But I'd
thinking.
also make sure that this might be a great place to spend $20 and boost your
Oh, we do that all the
push.
time, yeah.
Okay. It's so cheap.
Oh, it really
might as well
is.
do it.
And we will cut anything like a Temple Talk is always cut and re-edited to go out on social media.
So you have
So those
Monday
will
and
be there
Thursday
anyways.
posts or whatever. I mean, yeah. So I think you can figure that out. I think you're on the right track.
Cool.
But let's get some mentoring going on.
Okay. Absolutely.
Good. Hey. What do you think is your most critical piece in all this to focus on?
So we have 2 out of 3 Temple Talks recorded already and edited.
Okay.
Our first one went out on Sunday, and as of this morning, it was on our Facebook page and website, because we forgot to do that yesterday.
Okay.
Our bulletin inserts are coming along, and we're still, we're the people that work the hardest to make the brochure go last.
Right. Okay.
Because I'm coming off sabbatical and learning a lot of the things that I didn't know.
Yeah.
What else am I missing?
I think we haven't really talked about the thanking piece yet.
Okay.
So we'll need to process that, how we'll do it.
Okay.
We have done appeals the last 2 years,
Okay.
but I don't think we've done the thank you part very well.
Okay. Most churches are in that position, so don't beat yourself up for it. But start doing that this year. We'll come back to thank you a little bit.
I think the other part that's been difficult for us is is getting the data correctly. I think somebody said that. So I think we're doing a little better job of that this year.
Okay.
But to make sure that it's accurate so that as we ask as well as when we're thinking,
Yep.
that we've got that correct.
This is an issue for many, many churches across Protestantism. I won't speak for the Catholics, but do you have a retired engineer in your congregation?
Yeah.
Give them a project. Have them work with your financial data people to make it accurate. Because the church management softwares are actually pretty decent today. I hate them all, but they're pretty decent. But it all depends on how well we know them, we don't do a good job of training up our people in how to use them.
Yeah.
However, we don't have to. We need to give them 15 minutes a day to go on YouTube and watch videos about how they work. But an engineer will make them the quality control standard that engineers will have, that if they apply it to your financial data people, your data will all of a sudden become good. And yeah, bad data makes you look pathetic. I mean, makes donors wonder, can they really handle my gift? And so we need to make sure that...
I would say our data is the most correct it has been in the past 7 years.
Okay. And then maybe it's how do we get the data out?
Yeah.
And manipulate it and work it so it's telling us the story we need it to tell. So I think it's a great way to engage an engineer to use the gifts God gave them to help the church grow and flourish.
I just keep saying to our stewardship and our finance team, like, we can tell it whatever we want it to do, but we have to know what to tell it to do,
okay.
right?
Yeah.
Because that's the thing about church management software is that it's software.
And actually working with us, you may get a little bit better sense of that as we continue to journey on what we're looking for. Let me ask quick, what type of, like, we talked a little bit with like stewardship team and council giving first. Do you ever do any of that activity?
No.
Okay, all right.
So our theme this year is all in.
Okay.
It's really a product of trying to invite people.
Yeah.
Not just in their giving, but in, their attending worship, growing Bible study, these things.
Yeah.
In our Temple Talk videos, just concentrate on the 3 aspects of our mission statement, but from an invitation standpoint, to show that story of what it means for someone to gather in a discipleship huddle and how their life is transformed of that. And then we do a thank you as part of that Temple Talk to say thank you for your resources that help make this possible.
Okay. All right, good. I think with a theme like All In, certainly having the stewardship team all in, the council all in, and then go to the congregation for all in can be a good way to go.
Well, I think we're going to start with our finance team.
All right, okay, and that's a fine place to go as well. Then just a couple things on thank you. Immediate, and this gets to the data thing, we understand your pledge to be $32 a week. Thank you for that. Let us know if we're not right. You, along with 48 other families, have grown this much. We're on our way. That kind of immediate feedback. But then I think some of the longer term thank you is the way in which to get people to remember thank you. Like, actually, the thank you at the time of the gift is kind of the obligatory thank you, honestly. If you want people to gain a sense of thank you, it needs to be a little bit more ongoing. Some of that can be corporate, where you say, hey, we said we were going to launch this. We actually paid for healthcare for all of our staff this year, which we weren't sure we could do. I mean, or whatever, whatever we said we would do, when we accomplish it, say thank you for that. But then throughout the year, and again, this could be a data management thing. How many families?
We had 196 givers.
Okay. So if you thank 4 a week, you'll be good. A couple ways to do that. One, let the council take responsibility for that. At each council meeting, assign each of them, actually, how many people on council? 9. If each council person did 2 thank you notes a month, you would thank the entire congregation throughout the course of the year. But actually write a personal one and let people know.
We have an awesome card ministry. So.
Well, okay, find something else. Phone calls. Actually, my favorite way to start a council meeting is to not let anybody sit down, but you start out standing and you share with one another stories of what God's been up to in the ministry for the last month. And then you give each council member 2 families to call and share those stories and say, thank you for your gifts. They made a difference in making these stories happen. So that can be part of thank you. Now you need to limit people. You know, each call can only take 3 minutes or 4 minutes or whatever. But build that in. I also think it totally changes the complexion of your council meeting. If you start with outcome story and thank you, and remembering the donors to which made the ministry possible, rather than starting with a finance committee report. Just my thought on how to do that. But so there's some ways, we can talk more about that as the year goes, but to begin to put in a process for how thank you's going to happen, I think would be a great piece. But, and we'll talk more here in a few minutes.
Yeah. I'm still writing stuff.
Okay.
Well, I'm about to write stuff. I'm also moving on Thursday, so it's just a lot going on this week. So one of the questions I had, when we do a chart, we have both a regular offering and a mortgage offering. So I'm picturing a chart that would have 2-part lines. One part would be regular giving, and one part would be an extension of the line that's the mortgage giving. And then when we do the ask for, we have a similar line. Is that something the designers would do?
They can handle that. We just got to figure out how we want to do it. How many are currently given to the mortgage?
200
And which is how many? Half? Okay. Trying to think if you want to do a separate chart for that. I mean, is your goal to grow that a lot?
Not a lot.
Okay. I might leave it off then.
And just make it one.
We may need it.
We need to consult about that.
When were we talking about integrating this? Weren't we talking about pulling those gifts together?
Well, that was the other thing. We would be paying off the mortgage in 5 years.
Yeah.
But recently, we may be taking out another mortgage that would extend it another year.
Okay.
So, year or two, give or take. Or two. We'll see how extensive it needs to be done, but.
Okay.
So, I don't want to push real hard to be trying to pay it off right away, because we may be coming at people for a mortgage increase in next year.
What's your growth goal for the annual?
A little less than 100,000.
And you only need a modest increase in the...
Yeah, that would be 15,000 increase towards paying mortgage principal down.
That total for the year, you need $15,000?
For the mortgage?
Yeah.
To increase the mortgage, about, yeah.
Why don't we do this? Why don't we not graphically show it? But why don't you get a challenge gift for something, I'll have to think about this a little bit, for people, for new people and or increases, hold it. Challenge gift for people who increase their annual gift plus either make a new gift or increase their building gift, the mortgage gift as well. I got to think about how to do that.
Yeah.
Because
I think we were not going to ask people to increase their mortgage gift. So we're going to ask them to continue their mortgage gift, and
you're going to try to get new people to do the 15.
Right.
So let's structure the challenge gift that way.
Okay.
We have a $5,000 or $10,000 challenge, or you only need $15,000. So we have a $3,000 challenge gift if we get 50 families to increase their annual giving plus give make a first-time gift or whatever to the mortgage. I think you can leverage it that way to not make it the primary. You don't want it to become the primary focus because.
Yeah, I really don't, especially if we might be increasing the mortgage pretty soon.
Well, actually, if you go ahead and get more money to it, then you might go ahead and cover it here in the stewardship drive. But I want to make sure you hit your 100,000 on the.
No, we're not going to hit it. We'll probably need 100 or more, 200.
Oh, I'm saying cover the new payment.
Oh.
If you got 30,000, you'd cover the new payment.
Yeah.
So no, I wouldn't want to push that hard.
Yeah.
Because I want you to get your 100,000 for the annual first.
Right. So you're thinking maybe not even put another chart? I'm sorry, I know this is fascinating, everybody. We can talk about this later.
I wouldn't chart it, but I'd probably leverage a gift for it.
Okay.
And I'm gonna have to think longer about how to leverage that gift, but I think that's probably your route. Because it's just not that much money. Really.
Okay.
And it's not everybody. I mean, if you're asking half your people not to even bother with an increase to it,
Yeah.
I wouldn't charge it.
Okay.
I'd focus on the new people.
Okay. And our theme's gonna be all in.
Sounds like a good one. I like it.
Did you just
To be
think of
sure,
it?
mine came off of being a Cavaliers fan from 2016
Oh,
when they
nice.
won the championship.
I wonder if that's where it originated. I used it last year in a couple of places as well, so.
I just thought of it like 10 minutes ago, so it may not be the theme,
Or
but
imagine.
or imagine it might be imagine.
Imagine being all in.
Like that.
So we've covered a lot till we got to you. Is there anything else that you all want to address?
Nope.
Okay. All right, we've covered. Hey.
I have a question. I'm
Yeah.
still a little cloudy on regards to pledges versus actual.
Okay.
You know, are we looking at increasing pledges? Because we know that
Yeah.
actuals never match pledges.
So if you gave $5,000 last year, I am not excited.
Jump language.
No, thanks. I am not excited to simply get a $5,000 pledge this year, even though you didn't pledge last year. That doesn't matter. What I'm looking for is net increase in money donor, comparing donor to yourself, right? I don't want to just move money out of non-pledged revenue into pledged revenue and not have a net increase. I want the $5,000 donor to become a $6,000 donor next year because they made an intentional intent to give.
Okay, so we need to look at actuals.
Yeah. In that respect, yes.
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 Okay.
Yeah. Somebody becoming a pledged revenue and staying flat doesn't help. That's not the effort we're looking at.
We're talking about.
We're looking at a net increase in giving.
The 444 givers versus the 205 pledgers.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
how do you account for that actual additional, you know, actually 100%, more than 100% additional, 205 to 444. You know, you have those givers that you need to account for. And so, pledging, what is the benefit of the pledging?
Benefit of pledging is people tend to give a lot more when they make it intentional. I mean, there are exceptions to that rule, but there's not that many in each congregation. Most people will grow dramatically simply by completing an intention to give.
So would we handle the pledgers and non-pledgers separately?
No. Thank you for your contribution of $100 a week last year. Would you consider increasing your giving to $120 a week this year? Here's an intent card, please fill it out. It doesn't matter to me if they did the intent card last year or not. What matters to me is they grow by $20 a week in their commitment. So,
okay,
is that helpful?
That does, yeah, that, I understand.
I kind of felt like I had a breakthrough with there.
Even if their pledge was actually 200?
No, I said 100.
If they pledged 200, gave 100,
Then I want them to pledge 120 this year would be great.
not pledge the 200 that they originally pledged?
Well, if they'll actually pay it, then great.
Right.
But I'd rather get the cash than have an intent for a worthless amount.
Agreed.
Sure.
Agreed.
Sure. That's why we always budget on actuals versus pledges.
Okay. Lutherans tend to give what they pledge. I know there's always outliers. If you have a Lutheran who's pledged and giving less than that, talk to them. Something's going on in their life, normally something's wrong. ELCA Lutherans are really good about fulfilling pledges. There's a fundraiser that says, but Baptists, you don't trust anything they say. So don't credit that to me. But no, Lutherans, we tend to get between 98 and 103% fulfillment rate of Lutheran pledges. But we follow up with them throughout the year so that if something did happen, we can adjust, or they can adjust. Because I'd rather go to the donor that pledges 200 to say, could you actually do 120, instead of just going all the way to 100. I mean, because sometimes what you get is nothing, and I'd rather have something than nothing. So, right.
Yeah, I follow that.
All right.
That makes sense.
Anything else going on there that we need to check
Should
through?
I just talk about St. Matthews?
Yeah.
So, a little bit of our background. We just finished our second 3-year campaign. So finishing off a $3 million program. So we just finished that. So we're starting Stewardship second Sunday in October. So we're coming at this a little differently. We'll almost be finished with the mortgage. So we're finishing that off in the next couple months here. So that's kind of in the background. And we're also entering our 100th year. So we're going to be doing a centennial celebration starting next May, which will start another campaign. So we're trying to couch all of this, the stewardship between everything. So obviously we'll still ask, it's not going to be quite the same push. We're finishing up the mortgage, but we kind of think that just happens. And we're also already beginning the planning on the campaign for next May. So we're going to be communicating kind of all of this in the stewardship campaign that starts off soon. We're going to, for our Temple Talks, we're doing 4 videos that will kind of emphasize our 4 missional words and 4 pillars of our ministry. So why do we give? We support these things, and having people, we're calling them 6-word memoirs, or 6-word, what did Hemingway call it? 6-word memoir. Yeah. So just really short punches as to why people like worship, why they like St. Matthew's and the youth ministry and things like that.
Remind me how big the campaign will be?
For next year?
Yeah.
So it's not a 3-year, it's just a one-time. The last campaign we brought in 900.
Okay.
So we figure we're probably in the 400 to 500 in the 1 year kind of push, and being the 100th, more people are a little bit more excited about it and such. So the thought was 100, 3 parts, 100, 100, 100. 100 towards physical worship improvements. So really focused on worship and how do we improve sound, lighting, music, all this stuff. 100, the second third is outwardly giving, so benevolence, so supporting synod, supporting partnerships, so parts of those. So 100,000, 100,000, and then 100,000 towards future. So our 3 key words are remember, renew, remember, rejoice, renew. There we go. So past, present, future.
Okay.
And the future third in the fundraising becomes all about seed money for new stuff that would come, such as possibly a whole nother alternative worship time and music group that that this money supports. Now it seemed to line up nicely with the 100 year, so 100, 100, 100. But then the idea is we think we should be able to do more than that. So you say 100, 100, 100, but you say we'd really like to stretch to 150, 150, 150. Take us into the next 50 years, something like that.
The only thought I have is as you do that, I wonder, because the 3-year pledge period ended when?
It just ended like June 1st.
Okay. So I wonder what would happen if in the letter you sent people to say your average annual giving over each of the last 3 years has been this, which included your campaign giving.
Right.
Would you consider giving that next year to roll it into what they've kind of gotten used to?
Right.
That if you did that, you might only get 300 next year in the special, but you will have converted that money to regular recurring revenue, which I like regular recurring revenue. Just for anybody that wondered. So you may be in a unique position to say, thanks for your average annual giving campaign and annual together has been, would you consider continuing that as the way? And then it opens you up to all kinds of opportunities.
We've had the plethora. We had people who just maintained still giving to the building
Right.
fund. Those that said 3-year campaign's done, stop me.
Right.
I don't want to give to that fund anymore.
Well, 'cause
And
you
then
know-
the other ones just migrated everything over to general.
The hardest ones to convert tend to be those that gave stock gifts. I mean, they don't have that stock anymore. But oftentimes, if you invite, you can. Okay, so we can talk about that.
Yeah.
All right, good. Anything else? I think it's helpful to hear one another, share what you're doing. It sparks ideas. I think we've hit all the topics in all those categories that I really wanted to make sure we got. What you got?
I asked this on Kane, but do we want to do both a challenge and a, what's the word? C word?
Match.
A match. It's not a C word. It's a match, it has a C in it. Match and a challenge.
Your congregation's large enough that I think you could really pull that off. Like for your lower donors kind of thing?
Yeah.
I think, go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah.
And still communicate that to everyone that we're trying to do.
Do you communicate that both the match and the challenge to everyone, or does the challenge only go to the people that you're trying to get to?
Well, the challenge is for everybody.
Oh, the challenge. Okay.
Yeah. I don't mind communicating both to everyone. Everyone gets more wording about the challenge because the challenge is open to everyone. The match, you can maybe mention it, but really target that on those letters to the people that are eligible for the match.
Okay.
So.
And numbers, could you do 10,000 for each? Like, you should have a bigger number to be the lower, be the match, and
How
then
many
the
do you have?
challenge.
199 donors at $5 a week and less?
Yeah.
Does that
It's
include?
more like-
Does that include people that give zero?
No, that would be bigger.
And by the way, you don't include your $0 givers in that category because the line's too long then. Remind me of your history of collecting intent cards? Is there a culture for it?
We have like, I think the number's like 3 something.
With how many donors?
It's terrible remembering numbers. Yep, I can't tell you that. I should know that.
How many donors overall last year?
Yeah.
Current number of givers is 679.
And 300 or what? I'd want permission to relook at this when I could think about it, but I may go 5,000 on a challenge and 15 on a match. You've got a lot of people to choose from, especially if you had $10 a week and less. And if you had a 20, you've certainly got plenty to match $15,000 with. So I think
Okay.
I'd probably go 5 and 15, but
Okay.
I'd like permission to think about that outside of this group session.
Yeah.
Hi, a couple of questions. I heard about videoing temple talks. Is that what everybody does? They video them instead of doing live?
So just because I video it doesn't mean the person doesn't actually perform it live. It just means that I've put them on video ahead of time, so I've screened them, I've helped them get a deeper story, and afterwards I can push it out. But if you think in your context live is better, and oftentimes I'm not going to make a judgment. If you think in your context live is better, do it live to the congregation, but then you've got the video to push out to everybody that knows.
The other thing, when you're talking about matching, do I assume that we're looking for somebody in the congregation that has the means to do the matching?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's not necessarily one of your top 3 donors. There are people in your congregation that love to give a match, but they might be more in the middle, or it's kind of bizarre. Yeah, it's a good way to stimulate some potential out of people, rather than going to your largest donor for more.
Sure.
Sometimes what I'll do if I need a match or a challenge, if I have somebody that I know is going to be moving in a year, go to them and say, you've been so generous. Would you help us replace your giving by stimulating new generosity from others? And they love that because they know they've been helping you. But they're going to go somewhere else and help them. But they'll often be a partner with you on that. So That's a fine place to go if you know that's coming. Or if somebody has told you that, hey, I'm going to be retiring and I'm going to give less when I retire, say, hey, well, while you're working,
That's exactly what I mean.
yeah, go ahead and use that. So, okay. Thanks for your energy. Y'all are on the right path, right direction. This should be a lot of fun. It's very fruitful. So instead of staying here, why don't you go out and get to work? Sure. Thank you. Oh, 5 minutes early. Just